All right, please note that this meeting is being broadcast and recorded. The recordings will be made available on the town's YouTube channel. At this time, we will start our Committee of Adjustments meeting, February the 13th. I would ask that anyone that is here to put their cell phones on mute or vibrate, to not interrupt the meeting. I will introduce our folks that we have here today. To my immediate left is Adam Sabansky, our Chief Administrative Officer. I will have Ken Melanson, who is our Manager of Planning and Development Services for the County of Lambton, introduce the planners or the planning team that he has here or online, if you could, Ken.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So joining me is Patty Richardson, who is temporarily joined the planning team to assist us with backlog of applications here in the town. Also joining us online for the first application today is Mary Lou Tanner, who is a planner from the MPG Planning Solutions, which is the consulting firm that assisted with the update to the town's official plan, which was official plan amendment 54. I think also joining, and maybe I don't see him just yet, is Mark Dorfman, who is the planner that the town has contracted to assist with an appeal related to official plan amendment 51. Also online is Ryan Ferry, who is the planner representing JN Ventures, who's the applicant for the first application. Of course, Mr. Zanting is here in the audience, who is the owner of JN Ventures.
Great, and thank you for that. We also have Corinne Nada, Chief Building Officer, or sorry, official, as well as we have our planner, Randy Burke. And I'll introduce our committee. To my far right, Councillor Mike Vasey. Beside him, committee member Jennifer Turk. My immediate far left, Deputy Mayor Eddie McEwen, and committee member Les Goldhawk, and I'm Bruce Moulton, and I'm the chair of the committee. This time we will do our minutes from the previous meeting. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I have a motion by Les Goldhawk, seconded by Mike Vasey, that the minutes of the regular committee meeting of adjustments held January 9th, 2024 be approved as presented. All those in favor? Motion is carried. All right, we will move to our first application. We have a severance application number B-0124. Take notice an application has been made by AJ Clark and Associates Limited, agent for JN Ventures Limited, with respect to the property known as Concession 5 East, Part Lot 4, Town of Plympton-Wyoming, 3368 London Line. The applicant is requesting permission to sever 0.8 hectares, 1.9 acres from the above noted property. The severed parcel has an existing dwelling and an accessory structure. The retained parcel will be vacant farmland restricted from having any dwellings. The subject property is zoned agricultural 1A1 and no dwelling agricultural ND-A as per the Town of Plympton-Wyoming zoning bylaw, as well as zoning bylaw amendment 5 of 2024. Which has not yet come into effect. This application, in conjunction with the previously noted zoning bylaw amendment, is necessary to sever a surplus farm dwelling. At this time, I will refer to our planner, Ken Melanson, for his report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, members of committee. I'm going to have to take you back in time a little bit to give some of you some history as to how we got here, and then we'll take you forward through the application and why we're here tonight. So just to go back into history, when the provincial government of Ontario began restricting development within the agricultural and rural lands across Ontario, one of the things that was created was the ability to have a surplus farm severance. And that was to recognize that as a result of farm consolidation, so where a farmer has one property, but then has now purchased a second that has a farmhouse on it, that farmer doesn't necessarily want to be a landlord and would prefer to or could have the option to dispose of that dwelling through a severance process. And that's principally the only way under provincial planning policy that you can create residential lots in the agricultural and rural areas of Ontario. When that policy was created, and to this day, it is essentially the same, municipalities had the ability to opt in or opt out of that process. And at the time, the town of Plympton-Wyoming made the decision to opt out of that and not allow surplus farm dwelling severances. And the town amended its official plan to reflect that accordingly. And so they were not allowed. Fast forward in time, JN Ventures, Mr. Zanting's company, made an application to the town for official plan amendment number 51 to do a site-specific amendment to your official plan to allow for a surplus farm dwelling severance at this site, which was the appropriate process in light of the fact that the town had opted out. This was the way to move forward for a site-specific exemption to that policy. Town council of the day decided that they would not approve that official plan amendment, and it was formally refused. The applicant then appealed that decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Fast forward a little bit closer to present day, the official plan for the town was going through the 5-year review, which the county initiated through a planning consultant. And one of the issues that came up through that review was the issue of surplus farm dwelling severances. There were comments on both sides of the spectrum. It was a very divisive conversation. It was a difficult conversation, quite frankly, for council. And so in seeking feedback through that process from council, what staff proposed was if council wanted to go down this road to now do surplus farm dwelling severances, the process that is required, which I'll get into in a moment through provincial policy, the rezoning that would be required to restrict any further dwellings would happen first, which is not always typical here in the county and some of our neighboring municipalities. That would allow council to look at the rezoning portion first, have public feedback from a wider area because of the circulation, and then consider whether to move forward with that restrictive rezoning, and then allow the severance to come to committee of adjustment. Fast forward now to today. So we have gone through, the official plan review. After that debate and discussion of that process, town council decided to approve the official plan with policies to enable surplus farm dwelling severances. Those policies were then appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Through the process of case management and case resolution for the Ontario Land Tribunal, it was worked out through the experts meeting to put this application, because it is essentially resolving the appeal of OPA 51 and 54, or a portion thereof, through the process, have council review the zoning first in accordance with what they wanted to have done, and then bring this application to committee to conform to essentially what OPA 54 would achieve. So we are here as part of the second piece of the application process. Town council had the rezoning for the restriction of future dwellings on the remnant agricultural parcel at the end of January, and made a decision to approve that bylaw, which is the no dwelling zone. Now we are here for the second piece of the application process, which is for committee to consider the severance of the actual physical lot for the surplus farm dwelling severance. Contained in the report that is before you is all the planning policy that supports the application, as well as a review of this application in relation to the size requirements of the zoning bylaw, which this proposed surplus farm dwelling severance achieves. You can see shown on the screen the no dwelling zone that has been applied, which is part of the requirements in provincial policy for a surplus farm dwelling severance. If farm consolidation has occurred, which the applicant has demonstrated, you have to restrict any future dwellings from occurring on the remnant agricultural land, which the NDA zone will do and conforms to provincial policy. In terms of the conditions proposed, they are consistent with the fact that until official plan amendment 54, the policies for surplus farm dwelling severances come into force, neither the zoning bylaw nor the severance can actually take force. Once they come into force, everything would then be in effect. For the sake of presenting, we are recommending approval with the conditions that are before you in light of the fact that OPA 54 needs to come into effect. It achieves planning policy, it is good planning, and we recommend approval. I'll leave it at that. As I mentioned earlier, Mary Lou Tanner from our planning team who assisted with OPA 54 is available. I'm not sure if Mark is on. Mr. Dorfman's online yet. He may be having some difficulty, and then the applicant's planner is also. Should committee have questions today, the applicant team. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Mr. Zanting, anything to add to? Or does your?
I don't think it matters. Neither one of us really have anything to add. I don't think. Brian, do you?
Good evening, committee members. Ryan Ferrari, AJ Clark and Associates. No, nothing to add. That was a good overview. We're certainly read the staff report, supportive of the staff recommendation. And I'm here to answer any questions if the committee has any. So thank you.
Great, thank you very much. At this time, Lisa, do we have any correspondence on this matter?
Nope, we did not receive any written correspondence in relation to this matter, other than the comments from agencies that were included in the staff report.
Perfect. I will then move to our committee members for their questions. I'll start with my far right, Councillor Mike Vasey.
Nothing at this time. We went through this the other night, so.
Okay. Jennifer?
I don't have anything. I agree with the planner's report and the recommendations that are set forth.
Nettie?
No, never mind. I do have lots of questions, but you know what, they really are answered in how many pages of this, and in the end, it makes sense, in the end.
Les?
The only thing that I seen, and I think it's answered here in the conditions, was that to get to those farm lots that are left, you have to, right now, you have to access it via the parts of it being severed, or have separate access points off of London line. But I think that's captured here, so. And the other thing, I think it's a standard thing, is that the septic system is something that is to be checked on the parts of it. Is that correct?
That is a condition. If we miss that as a condition, it should probably be added. It was not intended to be missed, so I thought we had that as a standard condition.
What was that? Sorry, Les?
Septic system. On the applications typically. See it anyway.
Lisa may be able to.
So when we circulate the application, part of the application is the fee to have a septic review done. And through that process, Karine Nada, our chief building official, has reviewed the septic for this property. She said that she had no concerns for the property as it stands. If there were ever any improvements or alterations in the future, we need to be done on time. But we did receive confirmation from the county that they are no concerns with this time.
The only question I have, I guess, so once the zoning bylaw amendment comes into effect, does it come into effect after we say yes, or is there another process before that can come into effect? So if we say yes, and that, I guess what happens with that amendment, the deal?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Mr. Chairman, and maybe I'll start off, and I see Mary Lou's queued up, so if I miss anything, I'll rely on Ms. Tanner to jump in. So under the Planning Act, you can adopt a zoning bylaw that is not necessarily conforming to the official plan. Because if you have an official plan amendment that is coming into force, meaning going through the process in due course or subject to an appeal that would likely come into force, council can make that decision to adopt the bylaw. And then once that associated official plan amendment that would bring the zoning bylaw into conformance takes effect, that's when it would take effect. So in essence, the policies under appeal in official plan amendment 54 related to surplus farm dwelling severances, once they come into effect, the zoning bylaw then becomes in effect and in conformance, and then the severance becomes in effect. Because until those policies take effect, there's no fundamental foundational policy. Just, Mary Lou, did I miss anything there? Maybe I'll have her weigh in.
No, you didn't miss anything, just, the town's current official plan does not allow surplus farm dwelling severances, so the official plan amendment 54 does need to come into force and effect, and section 24 of the Planning Act has a clearly defined process for the circumstances that we're in. Just to also note, there is a proposed condition to the consent that OPA 54 come into effect. So it does require that, otherwise the consent can't proceed and the zoning would not be in place.
And once that, further to what Mary was added, once the policies in OPA 54 related to surplus farm dwelling severances come into effect, then that means anyone who wishes to apply for a surplus farm dwelling severance within the town can then proceed with that application. And there would be a process that they would go through. That would be fairly similar.
Okay, so I'll ask the question of probably half the people here. When is the proposal of that truly be coming into effect?
That would be up to the appellant, who is the applicant for this application.
So it's up to Brad.
That's correct.
Any other questions from my committee?
I'll just add, Mr. Chair, though, if there isn't a timely withdrawal of the appeal, there are mechanisms for the town and the county to petition the OLT to deal with the matter. And there may be costs associated.
Everyone ready? I have a motion. I have a motion moved by Les Goldhawk, seconded by Jennifer Turk, that the report by Ken Melanson, Manager of Planning and Development Services for the County of Lambton, Mary Lou Tanner, Consultant for the County of Lambton, and Mark Dorfman, Consultant from the Town of Plympton-Wyoming, dated February 13th, 2024, be received, and the application B-0124 be approved, subject to the following conditions. The proposed severance does not come into effect until Part 2, Section 2, in brackets 212 E of the official plan amendment A number 54, Corporation of the Town of Plympton-Wyoming, passed by bylaw 80 of 2021. OPA 54 comes into effect. In the event OPA 54 does not come into effect, this consent shall be null and void and of no force of effect. Number 2, the applicant must either obtain approval from the County of Lambton Public Works for an access to the remnant farmlands and remove all shared access future property lines and only access the remnant lands from this new access, or B, create a mutual access easement across both the severed and remnant lands to ensure access to the farm parcel. The access easement is to be the satisfaction of the town, and all costs related to creating the agreement and registering the agreement are borne by the applicant. Number 3, the drainage assessment on the severed parcels be reapportioned according to the agreement signed by the respective property owners and provided by the town. If the parties cannot mutually agree to the apportionment, or if the town does not approve, the applicant shall pay the engineering fees incurred by the engineer selected by the town. The fees will be paid prior to the stamping of the deeds. Number 4, a copy of the deed and survey must be submitted to the Secretary Treasurer in a form suitable for registration. Number 5, additional severance fees as required by the town be paid before the documents be endorsed. And number 6, the conditions must be met and the survey and deed be presented within 2 years from the date of the decision, or the consent will lapse. All those in favor? Carried. Brad, as you know, there's a 20-day appeal period. And after that, you can have those discussions with Lisa and our planning department for that 20-day appeal period. Okay. All right, let's move on. Yes,
Can I ask one question?
absolutely.
This is the remaining, or the portion that's been severed off that can't have any dwelling on it. Can you have animal operation on it? It meets all the setbacks.
For your worship, I'd have to check the ND zone and what uses are allowed. It is an agricultural zone, but I don't know if livestock is a listed use in the ND.
Wondering because if they do, if an animal operation is allowed, they'll need water. And then water fees would have to be paid for the frontage. That's all. It's just something that came to my mind,
May have any-
not before.
I may have an answer for you later in the
Yeah,
meeting
that's
when
fine.
I have a chance.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
All right, we'll move on to our second severance application, number B-0324. And just for the committee, I do have a severance application as well as a minor variance application. I'm going to read the severance application because the minor variance application is mixed in with that. But we will be voting on both the severance application and the minor variance application separately. So take notice that an application has been made by A.J. Clark and Associates Limited, agent for 406 Farming Incorporated, with respect to the property known as Concession 3, Part Lot 14, L154878, Step Parts 3 and 5, RD 155, Site PY 23720, Town of Plympton, Wyoming. 4386 Confederation Line. The applicant is requesting permission to sever 2 lots from the balance of the farm parcel. The first lot is proposed to have an approximate frontage of 69 meters, 228 feet, and an approximate area of 1.1 hectares, 2.8 acres, which would support the existing dwelling and accessory buildings. The second lot is proposed to have an approximate frontage of 129 meters, 425 feet, and an approximate area of 2.1 hectares, 5.2 acres, which will be for the future single-family residential development. The remnant farm parcel would have an approximate frontage of 50 meters, 164 feet, an approximate area of 37 hectares, 91 acres, notwithstanding the required minimums as per table A of the zoning bylaw. Thus, approval of this consent results in a necessary minor variance A-0324 to be heard concurrently with the proposal. The subject property is zoned agricultural 2, A2, residential 1, H2, R1, H2, and residential 1, 2, R1, 2, as per the Town of Plympton, Wyoming zoning bylaw, as well as zoning bylaw amendment 4 of 2024, which has not come into effect. The lands were previously subject of official plan amendment 53, OPA 53, which changed the land use designation on the subject lands from agricultural area to residential. OPA 53 was approved by the Ontario Land Tribunal, OLT, on May 11th, 2023. At this time, I will move over to our planner, Patty, for further information.
You summarized that very well. Thank you. I probably don't need to say too much. This property, like the previous property, has some history associated with it. It was subject to a county plan, well, when the county plan was reviewed in 2017, part of the property was designated urban center. During that review, the owner, Mr. Zanning, asked the county to place the whole of the frontage of the lands into the urban center designation. When the county plan was approved, neither of those things happened. So the land agriculture. Mr. Zanting filed an appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal now, requesting that the entire frontage of the property be placed in the urban center designation. That was approved by the tribunal and subject to agreement between the parties. So the whole frontage of this property is designated urban center. Then it followed up with an amendment to the local official plan. An application was made planning to change the designation to residential. That request was considered by council, and at the end of the meeting, there was really no motion. There was a motion to approve it that failed. Mr. Zanning appealed that no decision to the OLT. And they did come to a settlement, and the OLT did approve the residential designation along the frontage of the property. In January, council dealt with a zoning bylaw amendment application on the property. Council approved a change in zoning on the property. So the land that supports the existing dwelling was designated residential 1-2, which allows that existing dwelling to remain on the lot size of 1.12 hectares and 69 meters of frontage. The existing dwelling can be torn down and rebuilt. It can be renovated. It can be added on to. Any additional development on the property, say it develops more intensely for residential development, requires an amendment to the zoning bylaw. That would be permitted by the designation, but not currently by the zoning. That was approved by council in January. The zoning on the larger parcel, which is for future residential development, was also amended to the residential 1 holding to R1H zone, which basically allows single-family dwellings to be developed in a subdivision, more or less. But it isn't on hold until such time as the applicant satisfies the municipality with respect to servicing. Okay, so it allows development with lot frontages of 15 meters and lot areas of 620. That's where we're at today. Certainly what the applicant is requesting complies with the zoning bylaw, complies with the official plan. Now, the variance requested are the result of these 2 residentially designated properties coming off the balance of the farm. So just to make sure that the farm still complies with the zoning bylaw, the minor variances were submitted for area and frontage. And that is the history on that. I can comment on the septic system too, in case that becomes an issue. The existing septic system with the existing house can stay. It has been reviewed by the county and it's fine for what sits there today. Renovations, additions, tearing down will require a re-review of the septic system there. And at that time, it will be decided what needs to happen with it. So I'm recommending approval of these applications subject to the conditions that are outlined in the report.
Okay. Anything to add, Brad?
I think Ryan has a couple comments. We can start with it.
Good evening again, Chairman, committee members. Mr. Chair, just if I may, I do have a couple comments to make just on the staff report, if that's all right. But I will make my comments brief. So, Mr. Chairman, staff provided a great overview of what the application is proposing to do. Effectively, what is in front of this committee today is to sever off a lot that is already designated and zoned within what is the urban center designation. So the lot that's being severed, one of them is 5 acres in size. That lot is intended to be developed at some time in the future. Whether it be sold to someone or kept into the proponent's numbered company remains to be seen. It'll sit there and it will be developed sometime in the future. And I think it's just important for this committee to understand that if that property does get developed, it will require future development application. It will require a public process. So committee members, if possible, I just want to make a comment with regard to one of the conditions staff are proposing. That is condition number 2 on page 1 of the staff report. I don't see you in the room, unfortunately, but I'm assuming everyone can turn to that page 1 on the severance report. Condition number 2 asks us to provide 2 new accesses to this property. One access we are completely fine with providing, and that access is to the farm parcel. That's no problem. Committee members, the second access that staff are asking us to provide are to the remnant 5-acre parcel that will be developed in the future. And just for reference here, if I could quickly just share my screen. I hope the committee can see that. What we're also being asked to add an access on the severed portion on the right on this screen, which is effectively a future development parcel. Now, we are in support of the staff recommendation to approve this application. We're in support of all the conditions except for this one. The condition asks us to put in a driveway access to this severed parcel. And what I would humbly ask the committee to consider is whether this access is ultimately needed at this time. In the future, of course, if development were to happen in whatever form that is, an access will need to be provided. A proper driveway will need to be provided to this parcel. But I would humbly suggest to the committee that this condition to effectively facilitate the severance of a future development parcel, in our opinion, is not necessary right now. Effectively, we would be adding a driveway apron to a farmer's field, when that farmer's field already will have access to the retained lands on the left. So that was my only comment. Otherwise, we are in support of the staff report, but I would just humbly suggest that the committee reconsider that number condition 2 so that only an access will need to be provided on, I'm going to call it the parcel on the left in this image, and not the parcel on the right, for the reasons I just outlined above. So I think I'll leave it there, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to answer any questions about the delegation that I just made, or answer any clarifying questions. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen, and thank you for obliging me, Mr. Chair.
No problem, thank you, and I will refer to our staff. Patty, any comments on what Mr. Ferreira's
I guess just a couple. First of all, our official plan has a provision in it that says if you're considering a consent, that the lot must front onto and have direct access to an improved public roadway that is maintained on a year-round basis and is of a standard of construction adequate to accommodate additional traffic. So the direction in the OP is that a severed parcel has to have direct access to a public road. I realize this land's not going to be developed in the near future. However, once it's severed from the farm parcel, there is no right to access it from the farm parcel. The farm parcel could be sold off to someone else, and there would be no access to this. And I mean, what if it has to be, the grass has to be cut or it has to be maintained? There needs to be an access provided. And that is the direction from our Public Works Department also.
anything to add as part of the town, Adam?
No, and
It's a condition that the committee hears many a times, whenever severing a parcel, whether that parcel is subject to future development. It is the committee's standard clauses that require the parcel to be fully serviced. As this committee has seen numerous years in the past, when a severed parcel is not fully serviced, there tends to be conflicts between the severing party, the town, et cetera. Hence why the committee has chosen to include full servicing, including access, into your standard conditions. And that is why staff have recommended here tonight, in addition to the clauses that are found in it.
Okay, Brad, anything to add?
I think where my frustration on this is pretty straightforward. Patty obviously talked about the history. This has been a long-standing history. But even in the pre-consult meetings that we had in the 3 revisions of the pre-consult letter that was authored, including being asked to study trees on the property that doesn't exist and do MDS calculations within city limits. To me, this would have been the spot to include the request or requirement for this driveway access. And we could have done a minor variance at that time, included in the lot size minor variance. Now it's too late. We hear this last week that this requirement for this driveway to go in, if we do plan a subdivision in the future, it's further development of any sort, the culvert and access point that would go in today would be just wasted money, right? We're gonna put it, if you put a street in of some sort, it's gonna be a 66-foot road allowance, a proper road built to proper standards. This is just wasted money and it doesn't make any sense. So that's I guess is my request. To me, this is a common sense request. In the event, we're worried about selling the property as has been suggested. At the end of the day, the municipality is asking me as the applicant to put the access point in. In the event there's conflict in the future, or I sell one piece or somebody buys one piece, it is still the applicant's obligation to put the access in at that point. Nothing changed, other than nothing needs to change. Nothing's happening on the ground. It's just putting money in the ditch that doesn't make any sense.
I have a resident that is in the zone that would like to speak. Peter Zanting. Or do you have any comments?
So my only question. Is this a site-specific severance? Or, because what I've heard is that the severance is being requested based on 2 different zones. A1, agriculture, and residential. Is this something site-specific to this property, or does it apply to all properties within Plympton-Wyoming? Or should the zonings, should a severance be allowed? And if the answer is yes, great. Should a severance be allowed just simply based on 2 different zonings?
The official plan provides for this development. It's designated urban center and residential. No, not every property in Plympton-Wyoming will be eligible for this. They would have to be designated. This property's went through a number of planning applications to get it to this point. So we're simply severing the residentially developable portion of the property away from the farm.
Does that help?
Not specifically.
I think it is.
So I have two properties specifically that I'm referring to, that I'm in control of. And
So under the official plan, if the front 100 meters was in the settlement area, under the zoning bylaw, if the front 100 meters was zoned residential, then I would suggest it would be in a similar situation as this property. But if it's in the official plan as fully agricultural, then it's not in the official plan and it would not be the same. It would be subject to all the applications that this one went through.
that's all I wanted.
Okay, I'll open it up to our committee for questions. You have your hand partially up, Deputy Mayor
Yeah.
McEwen, so you can go ahead.
Yeah, do you have a concept plan on this property for residential subdivision of sorts?
There's been multiple iterations, but nothing that's that.
Indefinite, because if you have sort of a concept plan, then you could put your driveway access according to it, and you could start it there, and then you wouldn't be wasting any money, you see.
So I get that, other than that your driveway access for a road standard would probably be 50 grand.
Yeah.
And, you know, at the end of the day, where the market is on residential lots, I don't see sinking 50 grand into that project today.
But we might be doing this for nothing. Which thing? This comment.
So I'm not sure I understand that question, but
Well, if you don't develop it eventually, then what's the sense of doing all this? That's all. If you have, you know, valid reasons to do this, then I can't see why you wouldn't want to put an access in where it's supposed to be eventually. And you won't be wasting any money on a Mickey Mouse, access over or anything else, just right from the beginning, if you have that plan.
so I understand your comments now, sorry. The only point of severing this off from the retained farmland at this point is simply to work on getting the studies done that are required to do development. Archaeological, for example, the province is now requesting or requiring you to study an entire property when you do an archaeological study. And in this case, when you have 5.5 acres of development land versus 90 odd acres or whatever the math is that aren't, it makes no sense to study the lands that are not going to be developed, for example. So this application of severing it simply allows and facilitates that.
Any other questions? Deputy Mayor? Yes.
No, I think a couple of questions have been answered through the discussions.
Jennifer.
So I have a question and it's probably to you, Kathy. And it's more on the line with Nettie. It's why sever two properties right now? Could he just sever the farm surplus dwelling and sever the future development later? And then jump through all those hoops and whatever else we put him through for development, if that's what.
Yes, he could.
I'm just trying to think of ways to, I understand where you're coming from with the driveway, so maybe instead of severing two parcels, maybe just sever the farm surplus dwelling and worry about the future development when you have a concept plan in place.
Yeah, site survey.
It doesn't work for things like arc study. That's the problem. They want you to study the whole property. So if you don't have it severed, then
I will note that Mr. Ferrari would like to speak to this.
I'll actually let our planner speak first. Go ahead, Patty.
The terms and conditions of an archaeological study will be discussed when the time comes, and there is no reason for us to do an archaeological study on lands that's not going to be developed. The whole purpose of archaeological study is to look at the lands that are going to be developed and make sure there's nothing there. Okay, so I'm gonna have to disagree with the position on the archaeological study. Certainly it can be pared down to the land that's designated and zoned for development. So.
And I'll, Mr. Ferreira.
Evening again, committee members. I just hear the discussion around the table. I just hope I could be helpful with saying this. With respect to the access, it's not an either we don't have an access and then we don't do the severance, or we do the access, do the severance. I think in discussions with Brad, we want the severance to proceed as is. Ideally, if it could proceed without having to put that driveway in, I think that's the position. And I think, and I know staff have their position on this as well. I think from our perspective, it's, and like Brad sort of said, it's sort of a common sense argument. We don't want to amend the application in any way. I think really what my request is to the committee was, look, please consider amending this condition accordingly. So I felt that needed to be said, just because I was listening to some of the discussion. Yeah, I suppose I'll leave it there. If I could be helpful, again, Mr. Chair, let me know.
Jennifer, did you have any more? Mike?
Yes, thank you. I'm just looking fundamentally, that 5 acres is no longer part of the farm and needs an access. I know it's gonna be a useless access, but we don't allow anyone else to do it. We create a lot, we make sure they have access to it. So.
And as long as the access, our minimum width right now is 9 meters. Mr. Zanting has an engineer on staff, so as long as the access is designed in such a manner to handle future traffic loading, it may not necessarily have to come out. A lot of cases, though, depending on the development, they actually put construction accesses in to avoid damaging the roadway that they're working on, so it may or may not be surplus to the future development. I understand Mr. Zanting's desire not to spend money on this project, given the amount of money he's already put into it, and his desire to not put something in that could be future considered surplus. However, our policies are straightforward. Presented them to this committee as they are deemed to us. It's the committee's decision in the end whether to enforce that condition or move forward without valid arguments on either side.
I've been also informed, sorry, Les, I have another speaker that would like to speak that is in also the affected land. Mr. Henke?
Yeah, thank you. I guess this is gonna be more so to the planning department. I'm still kind of confused how we can go by the bylaw 97 of 2003 on the size of the farm to begin with, and you're asking for a difference of 1 hectare difference, but the frontage is very concerning of going from 150 meters to down to 50 meters. And last year, for example, the sugar beet guy, Volks has put in, they had no access to the farm, so they went right off the road in between myself to the west, which was kind of odd. You should have an access to that farm. So a road, I think, is important for that farm. But the other part is, I'm not sure what this all does to the designation of the county. It is designated at the county as A2 to the west of me. Or I should say A1, R1. What does it do now that to the zoning of the west of me from the county side is R1? It's still A2 restricted at PW. So I'm not sure what happens to that 160 some odd feet, which they haven't, nobody's addressed the ditch that's in there that actually, when I first moved there, was probably 3 feet wide. That ditch now is around 30 feet wide. So I'm not sure who has to give that land back in that ditch to the owner of that land, but I'm not sure how the access to that ditch is being addressed. And I'm not sure about the designation still on the R1 versus A2 restricted. And so I'm hoping that Ken can enlighten me on that, since it was down at the county side, they allowed the severance with no farm access to begin with.
Mr. Henke, I'm not sure if that is a question to be asking county. I'm not sure if that needed to be brought up at
I'll ask it to
committee of adjustments. So I can refer to our planners, but I'm not sure if those questions are council questions or questions that would be part of county questions. I will refer to my planners if they have an answer to any of that.
Not 100% sure what you're asking. We did have a long discussion the other day, Mr. Henke, about this property, and I think I was pretty clear with you what was going on. Your concerns about the drainage ditch that is off the access to the rear agricultural lands. I think we discussed that, and it's under the Drainage Act, and that piece of property is going to stay the way it is currently. There's no proposal to develop it at this time. It is the access to the agricultural lands to the back. Nothing's changing with regard to the maintenance of the drain or the location of the drain. Any of those concerns would be addressed if those lands, that segment developed. That would be addressed.
No, I think you're
with that, right? Yes, those lands are in the urban center designation and the residential designation, but they are not proposed for development at this point. So nothing is going to change there, except there will be a gravel access installed to provide access to the farm.
So there will have to be an access to that west side. Instead of the like last year, Grace brought in, I think, somewhere around 80 semi transports into that area between me and the ditch without any road access.
The condition requires that an access be put in here.
So because I know you're addressing the other 5 acres that have access, but there's no access to the farm there, and that's what I wondered if that's where you're proposing that driveway go versus the other side where the 5 acres. I was kind of confused on the access part.
There's 2 accesses that are required,
Okay.
okay? One for the remnant farm parcel, okay? And one for this
For the-
future development law.
Okay, perfect.
And this one has an access,
Yes,
obviously.
it does. Yes, it does. So I guess I was more interested in the designation of R1 versus A2 restricted on the west of me.
So you're confusing
I'm not
zoning
confused on the ditch and all
official
that.
plan
I just
designation.
don't know how that works out, because when this severance was originally agreed to at the county level, apparently there was access from London Road to this property, and that's why the county allowed the severance, or making it all A2 right across to that ditch, which there was no access that we found out later, but it was too late. But anyways,
I think the simple way to put it is that the planning process has multiple steps. So in this particular situation, it was the county official plan that placed a portion of the lands, the front portion that we're dealing with today, into the settlement area. That settlement area doesn't extend past this site. So, but when that happens, it doesn't automatically change the designation in the town official plan, nor does it change the zoning in the town official plan. All it does is it basically says at the county official plan, you are in the settlement area, or conversely, you are not. And if you're not in the settlement area, you likely have the A2 designate and an agricultural designation, because that's typically what ends up being applied at the county level, is an agricultural or a rural classification. Then what happens is there's other planning processes that kick in once you are in the settlement area that the applicant has undertaken, which is to change the designation at the local official plan level to residential. Then there would be a step to then change the zoning to achieve residential zoning. So there's a whole bunch of steps, but when the county official plan places you into the urban center designation that Patty's mentioned, which is the settlement area, that doesn't automatically change your designation at the town official plan or zoning bylaw.
so just so I have a clear understanding, even though the county approved that, knowing that they landlocked that whole farm by designating the whole front R1, that is acceptable to the county to do that and put the onus on the township, on the PW, to then figure out all the rest of it? Like, I never could understand why the county, and Ken, I know you weren't there at the time, but the county allowed to landlock that whole farm by making the whole frontage on R1.
Two things. Through the, I'll call it the OLT, but it would have been the OMB, the Ontario Municipal Board process, through that appeal. I want to be very clear, the discussions that occurred that facilitated the change at the county official plan level also included discussions with the town. The town was involved in that process. So the town was aware of what was occurring. Secondly, this does not landlock the parcel. A designation change is not a subdivision. It doesn't change a property line. So if you look at that diagram, and I'll use an example. If you see the portion to the right-hand side, so that, I'll point to it. If I use this piece as an example, let's say that this and the rest of the parcel above is one property.
Mhm.
If I go and place a designation here, that doesn't subdivide it. All it does is on the future land use map of the county, it says you're in the settlement area, you're designated urban center, and you can then begin planning processes to then change at the local official plan level your designation to become residential, commercial, industrial, and then you can apply for a rezoning. And then once that's done, it then facilitates the possibility that you could then sever.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Designation is-
Unfortunately, the county went all the way over to the west side of the ditch.
I'm facilitating a hypothetical example.
Yeah, so I didn't know if that affected the designation at the county level or at the PW level of it going from A2 restricted to R1, because it is R1 in the county official map. And I wasn't sure on the road access, because you're talking about that. I didn't know that also meant a road access had to go on the west side of me also. Because right now, when they pick up sugar beets, they put down some blankets down, I forget what you call them, pads, and 160, 180 transport trucks go in there between, my side and the other. There happens to be a house on the other side of that ditch. So I just wondered how that was going to work. Because when I heard the road access, and I wasn't sure, but you're saying, Patty, that a road access would be required on actually the 5-acre parcel and the one beside me.
And access to both those is.
I just wanted to be clear. I'm not sure. Brad was completely, I think nobody realized that we're talking 2 accesses. I thought we're only talking 1. So we're talking 2. Okay. I just wanted to be clear on that.
Les, sorry, Les, you had a question?
I was maybe a statement going forward with the 5-acre parcel, is that, the access for that. Expect that you'd have to have an access there for any studies that would need to be made in that area. So just to allow those people access to it.
Brad?
Yeah, as long as I own both, there'd be easy access over the retained lands, but just as a point of clarification, Patty. The 5 acres, if I wanted to build a house there today, I can't do that because it's zoned holding, correct?
Correct.
And Ken, you wrote the pre-consult report. I'm not able to build an agriculture shed on that property either because ag policies don't apply as per your pre-consult letter. Would that be correct?
Correct.
So I guess the reason I'm bringing that up, like you commented, when we let people sever their properties, we make them put in an access. And what I'm saying in this case specifically, and each project needs to be reviewed on its own merits. On this 5.5 acres, I can't do anything, period, without another planning process.
Farming.
Right, which realistically, we're gonna farm it from the existing lands.
You need access.
We have access.
Well, you don't, not if it's severed.
Well, in theory, a land speculator could purchase it and could farm it for an undisclosed amount of time, and they
In theory, and I guess that's the common sense mindset, that's the in theory, that's all.
All right, we're gonna move on. I have a motion here. I'm gonna keep the number 2 motion on, and it'll all be up to our committee. To whether they repeat that and they want to amend the motion or not. So I'm gonna read the motion as it's been moved and seconded. So, and that's the feeling I got from my committee. I have a motion by Mike Vasey, seconded by Les Goldhawk, that the report by Patty Richardson, Senior Planning, dated February 6, 2024. Sent application B-30324, variance application A-324. Affecting lands known as 4386 Confederation Line be received, and that consent application B-0324, which permits the creation of 2 lots, one having a lot frontage of 69 meters, 228 feet, and a lot area of 1.1 hectares, 2.8 acres, and supporting the existing dwelling and accessory building, and one having a lot frontage of 129 meters, 425 feet, and lot area of 2.1 hectares, 5.2 acres, and proposed for future single-family residential development. Be approved, subject the following conditions. Number 1, that bylaw 4 of 2024 become final and binding. Number 2, that the owner satisfy the Plympton-Wyoming Public Works Department with respect to the 2.1 hectares severed lot and the retained agricultural lots having individual access installed in compliance with the streets bylaw. Number three, drainage assessment on the severed parcels be reapportioned according to the agreements signed by the respective property owners and provided by the town. If the parties cannot mutually agree, the apportionment, or if the town does not approve, the applicant shall pay the engineering fees incurred by the engineer selected by the town. Fees will be paid prior to the stamping of the deeds. Number four, a copy of the final RD plan or survey be submitted to the town of Plympton, in digital format and properly geo-referenced to the NAD 83 UTM Zone 17 coordinate system. Number five, a copy of the deed and survey must be submitted to the secretary treasurer in a form suitable for registration. Number six, additional severance fees as required by the town have been paid before the documents will be endorsed. Number seven, the conditions must be met and the survey and deed be presented within 2 years from the date of the decision or the consent will lapse. Call the question. All those in favor? And is carried. Once again, there is a 20-day appeal period for that, and I will move on to the next variance. So I have a motion by Nettie McEwen, seconded by Mike Vasey, that the minor variance application A 0324 be which allows the retained farm parcel from consent application B 0324 to have a minimum lot area of 37 hectares, 91 acres, and a minimum lot frontage of 50 meters, 166 feet be approved as the variances requested are minor in nature in keeping with the purpose and intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw and appropriate for the orderly development of lands. Call the question. All those in favor? Motion is carried, and once again, it's a 20-day appeal period. This time, and I apologize to our next application. I'll do a 5-minute break if we can, just to sort out people leaving and whatnot, so it's not to interrupt. Lisa, if we can go on pause for 5 minutes. Lisa, let me know when we are back on. Okay, we're gonna move on to our minor variance application A524. Take notice an application has been made by Ted Loxton of Bayview Design Group, agent for Ron and Linda Leach with respect to the property known as Plan 489, Lot 18, Town of Plympton, Wyoming, 0 Egremont Road, corner of Eaton Court. The subject property is zoned residential 5R5 as per the Town of Plympton, Wyoming zoning bylaw. The following variances have been requested for a proposed dwelling. Number one, a variance of approximately 1 meter, 3.3 feet to permit the approximate front yard setback to be 7 meters, 23 feet, notwithstanding the required minimum front yard setback of 8 meters, 26.2 feet, as per table A of the zoning bylaw 97 of 23. Number two, a variance of approximately 6.8 meters, 22.3 feet to permit the approximate rear yard setback to be 1.2 meters, 3.9 feet, notwithstanding the required minimum rear yard setback of 8 meters, 26.2 feet, as per table A of the zoning bylaw 97 of 2003. Number three, a variance of approximately 1.5 meters, 4.9 feet to permit the approximate exterior side yard setback to be 6.5 meters, 21.3 feet, notwithstanding the required minimum exterior side yard setback of 8 meters, 26.2 feet, as per table A of the zoning bylaw 7 of 2003. Note, this is a corner lot. It has been designed as though Egremont Road is the front yard to accommodate site triangles. However, since Eaton Court is considered to be front yard from a zoning perspective, the above variances are necessary. So at this time, I will ask our planner to give us more information.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Unfortunately, Ms. Burke is not feeling the best, so she hopes she's feeling better. I'll just jump in to do this report. And I'll preface it by saying this is the first. I haven't seen this report, so I'll do my best to assist committee where I can. But you've summarized the application quite well. This is a corner and irregular shaped lot. And so some unique circumstances kick in from a zoning bylaw perspective, where the front yard and exterior side yard get defined in different ways than may be sort of common sense, and it looks, and so the front yard ends up being Eaton Court based on the front yard definition within your zoning bylaw, which then means that Egremont Road becomes an exterior side. And so the way that this parcel was designed was not in conformance with the zoning bylaw, but more of a corner lot perspective. So the requested variances would then facilitate the proposed building. That said, within the context of the neighborhood and the subject site, the requested variances are not unreasonable. They can create a hardship with regards to the adjacent developments or parcels. And it actually, they meet the tests within the official plan as outlined in the report. And because of the irregular shape and this being a corner lot, it's unlikely that some sort of variance wouldn't be required in this case because of the irregular shape. So staff is recommending the variance be approved, subject to the conditions noted in the report. I'll do my best to answer questions. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Leach, anything to add or anything from your representative?
I think it was summed up well. And at this point, I think we're just here for any questions. Yeah, we can't disagree with anything that staff had written.
Okay, thank you. Lisa, any correspondence on this application?
No correspondence was received, other than what was included from agencies in the staff report. I received one phone call from the property owner who is in the gallery to see how this application goes forth. But other than that, there was no written correspondence or anything said in favor or against.
Okay. I will open the floor to our committee members. I'll start this time with Jennifer.
I don't have anything. I agree with the planning report.
Councillor Vaizey.
Just right off the bat. Again, we're doing a new build and we're trying to build something that doesn't fit on a lot that. They know what the lot sizes are and what the zoning and everything else is, so it's. It's hard, yeah, because you're turning the building and it's, the front isn't the front anymore, it's the back and the side and. Whatnot, but. Again. On the lot and maybe it's. Go ahead.
Yeah, speak to that. When my wife and I looked at purchasing the lot, Mario Fazio had the property for sale. And within his listing, it showed building envelope as such, and he had a house design for it, so thanks for it. So before we even purchased the lot, we tried to make our small house fit within the building envelope, that we were under the impression that that's how it was used. Well, that's kind of where we got to this point. That's how that came about.
One of the challenges here with corner and irregular shaped parcels is that you don't have a typical linear structure of a lot that the bylaw really works well with. So when you design zoning regulations to say, here's what the standard rules are, they work best when you get the rectangular shaped lots that front to a road that has a right frontage. And then everything, you know, that's part of the challenge that's here is the front was not the front, the back was not the back. I think if you go back to the diagram, Lisa, that you had up there, you know, the presumptions of where the front was were incorrect. And so this is how, from a bylaw perspective, it should be interpreted. Hence the need for the variances. But even with an irregular shaped lot, you start getting into a situation where as you move further back from the exterior side and the front lot lines, things start to pinch. So the bylaw works best when you have a rectangular lot because there's no lot lines that are pinching as you get closer to, like, say, a rear or to another property line. Once you get these weird irregular shaped lots, it's not uncommon for variances to be needed. You know, that's been my experience throughout my career, regardless of where it is. I honestly don't believe, regardless of the front being the front back and then this whole bylaw interpretation, that this could not have been developed without some sort of variance being required because of its unusual shape.
Okay. Towards, Les, any questions?
Just a comment that that if the front was considered to be on Egremont Road, the variance would be minor in comparison to the variances that are listed here now. And in an all actual effect, the front yard will be Egremont Road.
Deputy Mead.
Yeah, I agree with Mike. You know, when you know you've got a piece of property, you know what the setbacks are, and you should build according to that, so you don't need any variances. But our planners are saying that no matter what they want to build on here, they have to have a variance. I really don't agree with you, but I accept your comments. Can these people, do you live near this house?
Yeah, right beside it,
Which side? On the,
on Eden Court.
oh, you're not in the Egremont, because that's where.
And I have no issues at all with it.
Okay,
I have no conflict or anything now that it's explained, because it was very confusing. The front being the side and the side being the front and the back being the back and all that good stuff. And like Ron was saying, this has been a couple of years, this has been sitting here and there's been a couple of proposals for it, and it was always, there was a house proposed on Eden, facing Eden Court, and there was access from there. This makes it very, I'm clear and I'm good.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just had a comment to Les about the existing, what it doesn't show here is if you were to use Eaton Court as the front,
where the proposed driveway would be. There's a fire hydrant right in the center of it.
I agree with the way you've got it set.
Yeah, okay, yeah, just, yeah, because we did look at alternatives. Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah, I'm done.
Okay.
I just think it's too close to this, I'm finished, yes.
So our counselors had an opportunity to make a couple comments, and I'll make one as well. I guess the Committee of Adjustments is here to make variances, so that's why I guess it's in front of us. Sometimes variants do have to be made. I go by that lot often. I drive down Egremont all the time, and I was on that lot probably help their neighborhood as well. So I will I have a motion here. There's no other questions or comments. I have a motion by Les Goldhawk, seconded by Ned McEwen, that the report by Randy Burke dated February 6, 2024 be received, and that the application A524 be approved, subject to the following conditions. 1, certified lot grading plan be submitted to the town of Plympton-Wyoming and approved by the town prior to the permit issuance. Number 2, SCRCA permit required at owner's sole expense prior to any development taking place. Number 3, number 3, final grading plan certificate submitted to the town of Plympton-Wyoming upon final completion and subject to the town's final approval. Number 4, building permit required, applicant to apply for a building permit and comply with all requirements prescribed by the Ontario Building Code and to the satisfaction of the County of Lambton Building Services Department. Number 5, to ensure eaves, troughs, downspouts, and grading is always maintained accordingly and with their own property boundaries, no exceptions. Number 6, right of way permit relating to the entrance culvert be completed to the satisfaction of the Public Works Department. And number 7, ensure the property is generally maintained and drained during the construction process, and that drained waters are not diverted to the neighboring properties, and that weeds and grass are always maintained within 20 centimeters, 8 inches or less. We'll call the motion. All those in favor? That motion is carried. As you heard tonight, there's a 20-day appeal period.
Oh, yeah.
During that appeal period, you can have discussions with Lisa or with planning if there's any questions that you all. That's it for our applications tonight. Lisa, do we have any business arising?
At the last meeting, it was mentioned that were due. Those have been paid for by the town, so people should have received emails saying that their subscriptions are renewed and that they're good for all of 2024.
Any other business arising?
No, not at this time.
Okay, I know we do have some new business about the applications that are coming in the month of March. Go ahead, Lisa, if you want to present them.
So at this time, we have a very busy committee of adjustment scheduled for March. There are 11 applications, which will have 9 staff reports. 7 of which are minor variances, 4 of which are consents. There's also the possibility of 2 more consents. We're currently in talks with people and they're currently scheduled for April. But we have 11 set up for March at this time.
Are they of the same? Are they generally the same?
So
I believe 2 are ones that have been forth to us before. Is that correct?
So, Mr. Buma's Douglas Street application that's come forth with the appearing. There's another one for Mr. Conga's on for different reasons in the past. This time it's for a building envelope variance for there's a couple of severances that have minor variances associated with them. So those are the ones where I said there would only be 9 staff reports for 11 applications. There's a variance with the severance. We're just going to do 1 staff report. And then there's a few more minor variants for proposed dwellings or garages.
So I guess what I'm gonna ask the committee, a lot of, is the 3-hour night. I'm wondering if we would like to have another meeting in the month of March if needed, or just trying to get, and if everyone was available. So Lisa, I had asked you to see if the if this room was ready or was available any of those other times is,
So, this room is available on all Tuesdays in March.
so I'll just look at committee. No, we do designate our second meeting, or second Tuesday of the month, which is designated for Committee of Adjustments. Are we willing to do all of those in one night, or would you like to split them up? I'll go each,
Then I'm doing two.
pardon me?
It's tied up in a couple of them. You're going to a second meeting anyway.
Okay, so I'll go individually. Les, what do you think? Pardon?
Second meeting.
Eddie? Okay, so I guess my next question is dates. So the next date after, I believe it's the 13th again of
Well,
or the 12th, right? Because we have a leap year this year. There's an extra day in February. So the 12th of February. So that would be the 19th. Is that sorry, I need to look at my calendar.
12th is the regular meeting.
I need to look at mine. Sorry, you don't have stuff on yours for me.
You're the guy, you have to celebrate. 4 years.
Allow time for notices too.
Yeah. And so would that give us time for notices? Because obviously notices would have to be out anyway.
Yeah. So if we do a meeting after the 12th, then it actually gives us more time to put out notice for those applications. Notice period for consents is 14 days prior to the meeting. The notice period for minor variance is 10 days prior to the meeting. So if we were to do a meeting on the 19th, I would have to get consents out by the 5th and minor variances out by the 8th of March. So that's.
Okay, so committee will have a committee of adjustments meeting on the 12th and the 19th. Okay. And split them up whichever way you would like, Lisa. Is hearing aid just go or?
No.
don't look at me.
Application every 2 hours, so it's.
Ah, that was a good one, Bruce. Any other new business, Lisa, on your end?
Nope, not that I'm aware.
All right, I'll go to planning. Any new business on your, or anything from you, Corinne?
No, just keeping in mind for severances, we're gonna have to make sure I get circulated quickly so we can try to satisfy septic comments, similar like we did for Mr. Zanting's application. It was nice to come with no conditions as opposed to reports and numerous conditions. So I'm hopeful that we take that into consideration when we're accepting the severance application, seeing as I think we're gonna have a lot.
Yeah, I agree with you. I believe that our next 8 months of committee of adjustments will be probably packed with farm severances, so.
And if the septic information isn't provided, we really shouldn't be hearing applications.
Okay, and that'll, so through planning, that'll be mentioned to whomever applicants and through you as well, Lisa. Send the application in. Sorry.
This is actually working on a surplus farm with the Patties and Randy Selva surplus farm brochure
or
a brochure for those applicants, so that it's clear what information is required to proceed with the surplus farm dwelling. Once Mr. Zanting and the town and the county will come to be able to settlement arising from the discussions today.
Okay. Anything else from planning? Councilor Baisey?
Nothing, thank you.
Jennifer? No. Adam?
Yes, sir.
No. All right, motion. By Mike Vasey, seconded by Les Goldhawk, that the Committee of Adjustments meeting be adjourned, and the next meeting will be scheduled for March the 12th, 2024 at 5:15 p.m. All those in favor? That motion is carried.